Christianity replaced the original holiday, which is now called Svečnica, as many know as Candlemas. As many holidays with their rituals, this annual milestone also has its roots entwined deeper into history. It is on the 40th day after the birth of the Son of God, when the mother had to bring him to the temple, recommend him to the god, and she had to cleanse herself. It was that Simeon in the temple realized that this child was the Messiah who would bring the light to the world. And so it is also a custom among Christians to light candles as a symbol of purification, and it is also a custom to make candles and consecrate them during this time for using them for a long period of time. This reminds them they are the children of the light, and they light a particular candle in times of distress, in times of disaster, and in search of happiness. All these new characteristics are taken from the older knowledge of the earth energies, of gods and goddesses, which are channeled through the various energies of nature, through the inner experience of men that were once much more connected with the immaterial world. The Celtic holiday Imbolc is well known to most, which means in the belly or ship's milk. It is the time when many domestic livestock are pregnant and animal babies are born at this time, so people also had some new source of food. This, too, is an indicator of new transition to a new life. Thus the Celts marked the transition to a second half of the year, the bright half of year, which already announces the arrival of spring or light. This holiday is ruled by the goddess Brigit, who brings new fire. In the system of the Holy Trinity of goddesses, she represents the aspect of youth, new beginnings, freshness. She is considered as the Queen of Heaven, who welcomes the new year. They say she was born with fiery flames in her head. On the eve of the feast, bonfires were lit and fire was burning in home hearth. On the first day of February, people lit many lights at the dawn to celebrate the return of the light. Even today, all the candles we will work with in the future throughout the year, which we will light for ourselves or use in public rituals, are dedicated to the time of so-called Svečnica. Sveča means candle in Slovenian. The Slovenian old word for month of February is actually Svečan, which derives directly from the word candle. In a large part of Europe, which follows ancient traditions, new priestesses are initiated on Imbolc as they are supported by the natural forces of transition. Regardless of the cultural traditions, everywhere at this time in early February, or in Slovene Svečan, also Vesnar, represents the inner transition in people that lead us to new tasks, new responsibilities, new actions, after we were more or less static in the winter time, and now we are setting onto a new path which has begun to be illuminated by the new light. In some of today's Slavic-speaking lands, the candle of this rite is called Gromnica. Grom means thunder. Gromnica is beautifully decorated with blue ribbon, fir twigs, or an evergreen plant, and sometimes even a herb is used called lučnik, in English common mullein, which in some countries is named after the goddess Devana. In our language, however, the name of the plant carries in the word light, luč. Lučnik, the mullein, is considered to be a magical plant that repels lightning in Slavic lands and at the same time represents the dominance of spirit over the bodies and thus symbolizes the supremacy over death. As usual, the day after the ritual, people lit a new fire for the transition to a new cycle with a lighted candle gromnica, and on the doorsteps of all doors around the house and in the barn and other buildings, drip 1 drop of wax to protect against disease and disaster. In particular, the lit gromnica protected against lightning. If we travel even further back in time, gromnica is directly connected with the goddess Devana, the goddess of hunt, the forests. She is an untamed young woman who represents youth, freshness, new life. She is also the goddess of the moon. She is a female force protecting people from wolves. Gromnica is a candle representing this female deity intertwined in many ways with the Celtic Brigit. However, when some associate the holidays with Devana and her gromnica, the Russians celebrate Dodola, and according to some traditions, she is Perun's wife, who is the protector of child feeding, breastfeeding, and also has similar thundery functions as her husband does. Svečnica is the time of cleansing, when we slowly move out of passivity and when we have consumed more cooked food, and then we transition into an active state with more fresh food. It is then that we feel what has new sprouted inside of us, what grows inside of us, and we must nurture that inner cause to make it all happen later. In our country of Slovenia, it was during the time of Celtic Imbolc that old holiday was replaced by Saint Blaise, Saint Blasius or Vlaho, considered the protector of livestock. On the certain days of the year, which were considered the holidays of Blaise, just like later Blaise, animals were specially well taken care of and they were not allowed to work then. Just a couple of days after Svečnica holiday later became Blaževo, or as old people say, All Cattle Day. Blaise is an underground deity that we have mentioned several times in our video posts. He is the lord of wolves in winter time, the ruler of underworld, the protector of art, livestock and sorcery and magic. And just as the time of Blaise or Blaise that took his place later on, various sayings and spells prevailed in order for people to protect their animals and ensure a good harvest. However, in Primorska region, western parts of Slovenia, they turned to Blaise for protection from Burja, a powerful northeastern wind. Above all, people turned to Blasius, when they had health problems, most often with diseases that make breathing difficult, where we return again to Lučnik herb, which is a typical magical and healing plant for these types of problems and is used for gromnica ritual as we mentioned. Blaise is considered to be the so-called the first cutter, because in Prekmurje, in eastern Slovenia, people pruned the vine for the first time on this ancient holiday just a couple of days later after Svečnica. And so it is clear that this time again is strongly associated with Blaise, watching over livestock, diseases and the transition to a new fertile period. Blaise is also the god who created the first witch, and the fact that he ruled over this holiday has maybe just a tiny resemblance with the Celtic way of initiation into the new priestesses just at this time. At Svečnica, after the wolf nights have passed, which is the time of the greatest doubts and fears whether the sun will recover again, so the new life cycle will come and give us new fertile year, Blaise is slowly saying goodbye. And since the darkest period has passed, overflowing with fear and uncertainty, we removed the decorations in our home that we made for Christmas time for the birth of a new sun god, Svorožić. Blaise is still watching over us as we connect with him in our meditations during January and February to ward off as many pests as possible from our gardens that we will start to cultivate in the spring. Soon, however, he will say goodbye to a greater extent. Current will come to drive away the remaining cold days, and we soon will welcome Mara and Yorilo, who will rise from the underworld, bring a new green spring full of hope and love for life. You can get Blaise pendant in our online store Svečnica. It brings us wealth in many forms. It makes you insist on your oaths, decisions. It helps you to connect with your subconscious mind, your own underworld, and thus helps you with various life transitions.